Hello and welcome to the Purpose Matrix. I'm Phil Moeller, and I'm excited to talk to you today about how to build a strong culture, how to get buy-in engagement from your team. The answer is it starts with getting clear on your identity and who your company is. The reason we're talking about this today is we want good people like yourself. We want you to be a great leader for your company, for your business, for your team, whatever it is you're leading, for your family, and I will talk about that. We want good people to be great leaders. And look, I get that you're busy. I'm busy. Everyone's busy. But building culture is the most important thing that any leader can do. Again, with your team or with your family, and honestly, with yourself too. I'll kind of talk about that. I also want to emphasize that you can spend a lot of time on strategy. You can spend a lot of time on execution. All that stuff matters, but culture eats strategy for lunch. It's so important to get clear on the culture you want and to build the culture. So today, we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And what's important is your culture is being built as you speak, whether again, family, business, your identity is being communicated to people as we speak. But we need to be disciplined about it. And to be disciplined about it, we need to be clear on what we want it to be first. So we're going to talk about the process of how we want to do that, both for business and personally. So today, we're going to talk about identity, about who you are, about who your business is, and about who you are not and who your business is not, if that makes sense. We're also going to get into an important part of getting clear on who you are, and that's building core values personally and professionally. And finally, we're going to get into some really actionable steps we can take to build out our core values, get clear on what they are, and then how to implement them and build a culture based on those core values. So I want to start, though, with a story of an event I was at a couple of years ago. And, it was a mastermind session. There were about 50 entrepreneurs in the room. And so it was a business-focused discussion. And as you know, a lot of times, when we're in discussions with people and we're getting to know people, people ask the question, oh, what do you do? And, I do that myself, right? But what it leads to a lot of times is maybe a surface level discussion. Hey, what do you do? I do this. I do that. I work in the corporate world. I'm a real estate investor, whatever it might be. So that was kind of on my mind perhaps at the time. But the speaker asked, he said, take a minute, take 2 minutes and write down, who are you? And that was it. That was the question. Who are you? And I want you to pause and think about that a little bit. What would you write down if you were, if you had a pen and paper in your hand, write down who are you? If you're driving, of course, please don't do that, but think about it for a second or two, and write down or think about who are you. I must be slow, or I didn't understand the intent of the question because I started writing down. And I was going back to that "what do you do" question, so I wrote down I'm an entrepreneur, or I'm a business owner, or I'm a real estate investor, or I have these apartments, or I do this. I was an executive, or I was in whatever it might be. And I was thinking about it professionally, and I was thinking about title and other things like that's what I wrote down, because I'm used to the discussion that we so often have, which is, what do you do? And that's a surface level discussion, and it's a surface level thought as well. That is not who you are. And the reason it's important to get clear on who we are and who we're not is if we identify with with things we shouldn't be identifying with, it can really lead to an identity crisis. So like maybe you're crushing in your business, but something is missing, or maybe you've just never spent the time to identify or define who you are. These different things can lead to a crisis because internally you are identifying with different things in who you are. So I just want you to think about that more. One story that comes to mind when maybe not saying it was an identity crisis would be pretty dramatic. But when I was leaving the corporate world, I was curious. I was like, is my identity too tied to this? Who am I going to be talking to? Will I be able to have, will I have like the status or the title or anything like that when I'm out in the entrepreneurial world on my own? And there was some real questions about that I had. So, and I think other people can have that. I hear a lot like empty, when parents become empty nesters, that can be a real challenge for people. And they might go through an identity crisis. And it's just getting clear on who you are and who you are at your core is really, really important. There's a story about Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs obviously became the founder and CEO of Apple, and he has a lot of different inspiring talks and quotes. But what he talks about is when he was 30 years old, he got fired from Apple. And he talked about how what had been his whole focus of his entire life was all of a sudden gone. And it really crushed him in a lot of different ways. He said, but what I found out over time is I was still loving what I did. And that's what's important, is like what you're doing, business and personal, like focus on what you're doing. And that's your identity, not like your results and what you're getting. And we talked about that in past episodes too. But ultimately, for Steve Jobs and for a lot of people, that detour, that change can lead to your true calling. You know, I left the corporate world and, you know, I was kind of weaving around. Like I've gotten more and more clarity on the direction I'm going and who I am. So that happened for Steve Jobs as well. So if I go back to the mastermind story, I was writing things down about what I did. You know, what do you do? Not who are you? And I wasn't answering the real question. So the speaker asked the audience, okay, what did everyone write down? And people started raising their hands. And some people, you know, some people said some of the things I said, but others said, you know, I am a husband, or I'm a father, or I'm a child of God, or I'm a man of faith, or I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a servant leader. And there was more thoughtful answers for sure, which two things. One, it made me rethink, what am I writing down, and go back to that. And honestly, I was erasing things and changing the order and like, oh, how did I miss some of these things, you know? But that's okay, because I course corrected, and it's caused me to think about it a lot since that time. But the other thing is, it was clear to me that people in the audience were clear on who they were. They were convicted of who they were. They had thought about this before, which is why it built a conviction in me that, okay, I need to give this a little bit more thought about who I am and what I'm all about. So I want to spend some time talking about just this for your business and what that means. And really, what does your business stand for? What is the experience of your employees, of your customers, of your contractors, anyone that interacts with you or any of your employees? What is the experience you're providing to the people that you interact with? Because the right culture, the right values, when you define it, it's going to get results. It's going to get the results you want. Now, not always, not every time, and don't get caught up in the results. We've talked about that in the past, but the right culture will get results. It eats strategy for lunch. So you need to get clear on what the culture you want is, and then you need to take the lead the way. And I'm going to talk today about some of the, how do you build, how do you get clear, how do you define it, but also how do you execute upon the culture that you want? Because execution of culture matters. Like, it's not just executing operationally, but executing on culture does matter. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit today, and even it'll carry over into future discussions. Before I get into that, though, there's also an important topic to be had, which is who you are not, or who your business is not. So for you, you are not your results. You are not your net worth. You are not your title. You are not your worst moment. You are not your best moment. You are not just a busy person, right? Be careful with these definitions, and maybe be aware of things that you're doing or getting, but get clear on who you want to be and define that. From a business perspective, you're not your revenue. You're not your sales growth. You're not your social media following. You're not your branding or your logo. Those things aren't you. Your culture is the best representation, first of all, of who you are as a leader, because leaders create the culture of any organization. But your business isn't your results. The business is the culture you create, and what and how your employees act all the time, how you act all the time. So don't build your identity personally or for business based on your results. Build it based on principles. And principles and core values is what I'll talk about. So the way we build, the way we can get clear on our identity, on who we want to be from a business and personal perspective, is that we can build our core values. So from a business perspective, this is so important. If you as a business owner have not built core values, you need to do it. It is so important. And I can speak from two lenses. When I was in the corporate world and I led a team there, we did not, we had our big company core values. I couldn't say what any of them are, and no knock on the company. They weren't ingrained in us. They weren't talked about all the time. They weren't part of our regular meeting environment or anything like that. And I didn't build the core values or get clear on the core values for our team and for what we were doing, right? We had some things that we did that were good, of course, but we didn't have clarity on the core values. In my business now, our team is clear on the core values, and I'm going to tell you how we built those and how we use those every single day from a personal perspective. And this can go to both yourself individually, what are your core values, as well as your parenting. And I think for both, you want the team to understand what the expectation is, the family team or the business team. And you also want to be your core values to be the decision filter that you use, and importantly, that your team uses, your children use in the future. So they're so important. So let's talk about how to build core values. And again, I'll start with business and then I'll go to personal. So first, from a business perspective, this was probably a year or two ago when we did this, maybe 18 months ago or so. And as I said, we didn't do it in the corporate world, but we've done it in our small business here, and it's had a great impact. And I think it just has set us up so that as we grow, whatever that pace may be, we will have control of the culture that we're building, because I think it is the most important thing. And I'm excited to build a phenomenal culture. And I want you, because I want good people to be great leaders and build great cultures. I want to help give you the tools to do that. And core values is an important part. So first of all, I won't go into a lot, but you need to have a clear vision of where you're going. The leader of the organization, of the team, needs to do that and clarify that. You can get input on that, but that's an important first step. We're not going to go into that a lot today, but when the vision is clear, then we get into, okay, what are the core values? And we need to get engagement and input from the team. So what we did, and I would encourage you to do, is just ask the team members, hey, if we were to build out core values, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever number, and you don't have to put a hard drop dead number on it, but get everyone submit 5 to 7 core values, let's say, and everyone submits those. And we did that as a team, and everyone submitted them, and I kind of gathered them, and then I started to group them together. And I said, well, there's a theme here around purpose and faith, or whatever it might be, and then there's a theme here around attitude, and there were some different themes that came up in grouping, and then there were some words, but almost a lot of the words that the team came up with, as a sub bullet or sub item within another person's word or whatever it might be. But we landed on 5 core values. We consolidated them. We maybe reworded them. We had some sub phrases for them. And we're still talking about it. And we're talking about taking this to the next step, which I'll talk about. Execution is like, do we put them on the wall and stuff? But to be clear, the execution is not about putting core values on the wall. It can be a piece of it, but because we want it to be visible. But really, we have to have processes to live up to the core values with our business and in our family too. So for our business, our core values, we have 5 of them. And the 5 core values that we have for our business are: number 1, purpose and faith. We believe that our work matters eternally. Number 2 is growth mindset. We're always learning, always growing, and always evolving. Number 3, service and respect. We treat people with dignity and service for others. Number 4, positive attitude and energy. We lead with perspective and not pressure, but we have a positive attitude and positive energy. We bring energy to the discussions we're in. We don't pull it out of the discussions that we're in. We bring it. And finally, character and integrity is the last one. And that's pretty straightforward, but we need to be good people. And the other thing is, part of it is, we want people that are going to work hard, that are going to get things done. So those are our core values. Again, purpose and faith, growth mindset, service and respect, positive attitude, and character and integrity. So that's how we did it. And that's what we came up with from a business perspective. And our team has bought into it. And then from a family perspective, very similar approach, just a little bit different when you're dealing with, adults versus young kids, but get the kids involved in it, make it a fun exercise, ask them what they think. There's a Gary Keller, the one thing core values cards that they have that you can use. So it, like, instead of the kids having to come up with words, they can pick their favorite words. By the way, you can do this for yourself and in your business. You can have each of your team members go through this process. We didn't do that at work, but there's some tools that I've come across since we built our core values that could be useful to you. So the one thing core values is a helpful tool from a family perspective. And then what's neat about the core values is we just had a lot of discussions with the kids. We were talking about it over dinner. Things would come up at the time. We're like, well, maybe this fits. Maybe this is the right word. Maybe that is. And it's not the wording, but just it created the discussion and dialogue. And that's really what we're looking for, is we want it to create discussion and dialogue and just understanding and learning of what the core values are, really what the expectations are for the culture we're trying to build in our business and our family. And then we fine tune them. And then my wife and I really took the input, but really, and we were a heavy hand in that, but we had the kids involved, and then we fine tuned them, brought them together, and really got the wording and the titles and subtitles put together. So our family core values are: 1 is faith, 2 is courage, 3 is health, 4 is service, 5 is positive attitude, 6 is love, and 7 is growth mindset. And you can hear the overlap between the business and family core values. And I'm sure you'll have that for others. But again, our business values aren't just mine, they're from the team. We get bought in. We had buy-in from the team, and then we reworded them. But there's not a coincidence that there is also some overlap there. And there should be for you too, because really at your core, if your personal core values, if you're clear on those, I would think those would carry over into, I hope you're able to allow those to carry over into your business, and of course into your family. So, and just the process of getting employees and kids, but really employees involved in it's just so important. And we're going to talk about this more in future episode on like strategy deployment and when we're building a strategy. But when we're trying to define what the culture of a company needs to look like, we need to get our team members involved, because if we just present, here's the core values, which is kind of what happened to me in the corporate world, like they were already pre-established. I didn't feel bought into those. I didn't feel like I was a part of those, where our team here, they were a part of them, and they feel that they were a part of them. And because of it, they believe in them. And we even had, we established them over a year ago in our last quarterly review here in the last month or two. We just pulled them up. We said, hey, does everything still align here? Does everything still fit? And we didn't change any wording at all. We talked about adding some sub wording and, maybe putting them up in the office or some other things to bring them more front and center. And that's what I'll talk about now, is how we do that right now. And I'm sure this will evolve and we'll add to this, but it's just so important. Again, part of the leader's job is you have to build, not a huge part, the main part of your job is to build the culture you want. And you got to start by defining what that is and the values you're going to live up to. So once you've defined it, how do we implement it? How do we execute it? First, we have a Monday morning level 10 meeting, which is level 10 is a phrase from the book Traction that you may have heard about in the past from me or others. But when we do our headlines, which is highlights from the prior week, good and bad, we have a column for each core value, and we just check yes or no, did it apply to that core value? And if it did, we put a check mark in there. And every single core value, our goal for the quarter is to meet that core value with a headline 15 times. First of all, it's really building the awareness and really the knowledge, like our team really knows what our core values are, but it's also reinforcing the positive behaviors that we want, and making them more automatic or subtle. So we talk about them every Monday. I talked about having a quarterly goal for those. We also have quarterly personnel discussions with every single team member. And part of that is they come into the meeting and they self-rate themselves on each of our core values, plus, minus, which is kind of neutral, or minus. And they rate themselves and they comment why. And then I rate them as well. And I give them feedback on what I think. And again, it reinforces it. And it has created some good discussions already about, mostly positives, of course, but still let's keep working on it. And let's just keep getting better and better at these core values, because we have to be building the culture that we want and that the organization wants. The team members want this culture. They don't want new people coming in and disrupting the culture. They want them to fit into the culture and build the culture. So there's a quarterly review process, which has it, by the way. If someone has a minus, they're not automatically fired, but they're going to need to address that. And if there's a continuous minus of core values from someone, or just overall, like there's 4+ minuses that are really just not living the core values of the business in many different ways, and it's a continuous thing, then we got to make the tough decision on employees. And the culture is so important. So we have to be doing those things on a regular basis. And I think if the employees know that, they're going to live to the culture that the team and the organization has defined. And then just hiring in the decision, the core values as a filter for the decision-making in the hiring process is so important. We're going through interviews right now for a position, and we had, some different phone interviews, and one of my team members was saying, hey, this person seems to have the experience. They seem to know what they're doing. I just don't know if they meet our core values of a company. And, they didn't make it to the next round. They're not compromisable. These things are not compromisable, especially when hiring. And if they are sustained with current employees as well, then you got to make the tough decisions if people aren't living up to your core values. So it's so important. You've heard that over and over again from here in the last 20 minutes, but I strongly encourage you. This isn't soft. This isn't fluffy stuff. Like, this is really important work, the most important work for leaders in businesses and for your family, which I'll talk about now. So similarly, I talked about how we built them. My wife did a little art project where she put, 7 different little wood placards, if you will. The kids painted the core values with a stencil on each of these things. And then we put them up on the wall at the top of our steps, and they can walk and see those all the time. So they're visual, they're visible. Do they look at them all the time? No, but they can see them. Or, if there's a discussion about someone not living up to a core value or really exemplifying a core value, we're trying to use those and reinforce those. We'll occasionally have dinner discussions like, hey, how was your day? Did anybody live up to a core value or anything like that? We try to do it, but as you can imagine, there can be chaos at the dinner table with 5 kids. So we do it when we can. We're probably not as regimented as I would like to be, but that's on me. But the kids are learning it. And what's so important is I want our kids to know this so well, because I want this to be the decision filter as they decide who they want to hang out with, who their network, who their associations is, because it is so, so important. So if they're deciding which friends maybe they want to hang out with at school, or when they go to college, who do they connect with well, or who do they not connect with well? Well, I want the core values to be a filtering mechanism to say, wow, I just do not align with my core values of these people. So I want them to get out of that situation. I want them to be around people that are aligned with core values, not people that don't have diverse backgrounds or aren't different in any ways, but core values are important. They're core to you. And I think it's important to associate with others that have similar core values. And then for yourself personally, I think it's important to go through the process. And if you get clear on your core values, or even just your identity and who you are, you can write those things down daily. Like, I am a man of faith, or I'm a leader, or whatever it might be. Write down your identity statements every single day as affirmations, so that you're reinforcing who you want to be on a regular basis. And again, when you have big decisions or just decisions in general, do what you can to filter decision-making through your core values. So again, just to emphasize the importance of this, if you're not being disciplined about culture in business or in your personal life, it's happening. It's happening by default. And, the more discipline, the more you do, obviously, the more the culture you're building will be what you want. And the less disciplined or the less clear that your family or business is on what the expectations or what the core values are, the more chaotic it's going to be, and the less control you're going to have over the situation. And I really emphasize it's so important. So really just spend time on it, get clear on who you are, who you want your business to be, what your core values are. I am this, I am that. We are, as a company, we've heard we are Marshall, but as a company, like, we are a company that, operates by purpose and faith, or we are a company that has positive energy and attitude, right? You can say we are this from a company perspective too. So my challenge to you is take some time, maybe tomorrow morning when you get in the office, or maybe at the end of the day today, if you listen during lunch, whatever it might be, maybe if you're listening to this on your drive in, right when you get to work, what are your personal core values, or what do you think your family core values are? What are your business core values, right? Maybe have a discussion with some of your employees. What do they think of this? How would they like this exercise? Maybe talk to your manager or your boss, so the owner of your company. Hey, are you willing to do this exercise? Maybe you could facilitate it for the boss, because this stuff is so important. And then use the different tools we've talked about to implement them as well. And just start the process. If you haven't even thought about this, or if you're at level 1, get to level 2, start advancing, but make progress on this in the next 30 days. Commit to getting clear for your family and for your business what you're trying to build, the culture you're trying to build, because it is the most important work that you can be doing. So just kind of in closing, we're going to talk in future episodes more and more. We're talking some high level stuff early on here. We're going to get more into really tactics and execution, and really how do we get this done? How do we deploy these types of things? We're going to talk about strategy deployment as an example. And I'll just say we really appreciate you listening so much. Our goal is to bring value to leaders, to business owners, to entrepreneurs, anyone that wants to get better. And we want people like yourself to be great leaders. We appreciate you listening so much. Follow us on YouTube. We do video and audio. A 5-star review takes 5 seconds. It really helps out. By the way, one of our employees, one of her rocks that she came up with, but is to get so many 5-star reviews this quarter. So you'd be helping our employee out if you do it. And I super appreciate it, of course, as well. Share it with a friend, whatever it might be. But most importantly, take action on this. Take action for yourself. Take action for your family. Take action for your business or for your team members, and put these into practice. Because this is the most important work you can be doing. For the Purpose Matrix, signing off.